All right. Well, welcome everyone. I'm Crystal Warren from Amazwi, and my colleague Zongizile Machoba is also here. Marika is also a colleague, but she's wearing a different hat tonight. So on behalf of Amazwi, the South African Museum of Literature, we welcome you to this launch. We would have been having this launch at the museum, which would of course be much nicer. We could have seen each other in person, but that wasn't possible. So at least we are online, and it does mean people who are in distant places can also attend. So I hope that you enjoy this launch and this reading. Just some housekeeping. We're asking that everyone mute themselves and possibly even turn off your camera. It will also just reduce your bandwidth while we're doing the reading. If you have any comments or questions, add them into the chat. And once Denise has finished reading, then she will be able to answer any questions and have a bit of a discussion. And right at the end, we'll have everyone turn back their cameras and their audio, and we can all say hello and chat a bit then. Okay, so I'm now going to hand over to Marika, and she will introduce the publisher, Ariel.
Thank you. So I'm welcoming you on behalf of Ariel Publishing. Ariel is a small publishing house here in Makanda, and it is linked to the writing group. It's a community writing group that is part of the Institute of Study of Englishes in Africa, ISEA. And this has been going on since somewhere in the mid-90s, that there was this writing group, and it was decided that to launch a kind of a publishing place so that people who have been involved or engaged with this course could have a space for publishing. So it's mainly a publishing house for first books, and to give people a chance to be published in that sense. It started off with the center of the book, who gave us kind of some seeding money, so that the idea was that we could publish 2 books, and from the funds from that publish the next few books. So the next round of books, and it went on like that. However, at some stage, you know, the kind of publishing fees have gone up quite a bit. So at this stage, we also, when necessary, we also have to fundraise to get books, money to publish the books. But the main idea is that it's run by volunteers. As soon as somebody's book has been published, they become part of they can participate in as much as they feel able to in the whole process and help with. So in this sense, for example, Crystal and Mangaliso, who I see is here, and Carol and Paul as well as Robert, have been involved as facilitators on this course in the past, for example, and other people, and I think Harry Owen as well. And then other people have been more involved. For example, I've been more involved with and Robert with the editing, and Robert has particularly brought his publishing experience in publishing towards Ariel. So in that sense, we all work on it more as we volunteer our time and skills for this project. So as publisher, we'd like to thank Denise for this book. It was published last year already, came out during lockdown, and we've had both of our books from last year. Denise's Whitewashing My Yellow Bones, and Liz Gowan's Butterfly Bones, launched during this festival. And then we'd also like to thank everybody else who was involved with this specific book: Liz Gowans for the design, and Michael Jasper for the cover design of the cover, and Robert and Carol Leff and Robert Berold have been involved as editors in the book mainly. Thank you. And Robert will now give an introduction to the book itself before Denise will do the reading. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. I'm Robert Birrell. I'm involved in Ariel as a whole with Marika, but I'm particularly involved in this book quite heavily. Carol and I identified this book as, well, it was quite a sprawling manuscript, as Denise will acknowledge. It's you know, it went on, and sort of, she wrote it in two phases actually, when she was in her 20s and later on, more recently, and it kept having more and more and more different approaches, different angles, different voices, and the next generation. But I persuaded Denise that we should edit it to the original story, mainly to the just to the narrative, you know, without too much psychologizing or reflection or anything like that. And she sort of reluctantly agreed to that, and then she got into it herself. And so you'll see that this is mainly a story of a young woman, adolescent woman, not entirely, because she has more of a reflective part later, but of just being confronted with her situation, of being colored but not being told that not really told that she was colored, and the parents not really disclosing to the children that they reclassified white, which they did legally, but there was a constant balance between, or balancing act between trying to conceal this. It was a whole thing. It was a terrible situation for the children, five siblings, all girls, had to deal with, and try and figure out what was going on and deal with the responses of apartheid society to them. Anyway, I'm not going to explain too much of that. It'll come out in Denise's reading. I should also say this book is, on the book it's got Nisi Daniel, and that's the author. Denise doesn't mind that she's identified as Denise, but in the published version she wanted her to protect certain people, especially in her family. She wanted to put a pseudonym. So it's like a pseudonym, but it's also not a secret. And yeah, the book is really, it's very short. We'll talk to you later about how to get hold of it. But I think the main thing now is that Denise is going to read us some passages.
Somebody's trying to get in. They've just messaged me, Drew Lindsay. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much for making time to be here. I'm really grateful for everyone who's arrived. I hope some more people will pitch up, but we'll keep going. While I'm reading, if you have any questions or comments, please feel free just to type them in the chat, and we'll come back to that after the reading. And I'll try and answer as many questions as come up. So I'm going to read three excerpts from the book, starting on page 8. The book is made up of little small stories, little chips of memory, and that are all sort of cobbled together to make a kind of a mosaic of understanding or experience. And so when I give quite a long pause, it just means that it goes into the next little scenario. So page 8. Our family was among the 100,000 people who were invited to cross the apartheid colour line to preserve their livelihoods. Clinging to their God-given talent, they were balked by a system that got good use out of them. It was double talk and double standards and double punishment, from mothers and fathers to the children, future generations. We had no way to unlock what they'd done. They took us all prisoner. A parental argument breaks out over dinner. There sit 5 children like butterflies pinned to a display board on the far side of the bench around the dinner table, which was designed like a booth at a fast food restaurant. My dad loved American interior design. Like the fuse of a small bomb, his flame had burned low and reached the gunpowder inside his frame.
He exploded, sending the water jug crashing into the wall. Shards of glass shattered back in response to the impact, making it impossible for us to continue eating. We sat pinned to the bench. My mother ducks behind a scullery wall. "You're all coloured," he yells. "You can be taken away at any time." We have no idea what is going on. My father vacates his seat at the head of the bench, and it is as if somebody has taken the pins out of our backs, and we are all free to leave the table, or leave the crime scene with its shattered glass and the dead body of broken dreams. Mother decides we all need to be as calm as she is, and lines us up in the passage under the Black Christ on the cross, a painting by Stanley and Corsi that Dad was so proud to own. She hands out Valium, 1/2 each, as we are underage, to bed, to sleep, to dream of nothing. The chemical reaction produced numb, calm nothingness. Years later, as a teenager, I write in my journal. My father, Edward Williams, stood at the door of the church, pulled his shoulders back to make sure that he was standing to his full height, took a deep breath and pulled in his stomach. He was pleasantly aware of his powerful build, his good suit and polished shoes. He loved this duty, standing at the entrance and waiting to greet the congregation. He was certainly noticed. He liked best to stand alone, away from Yvonne, his beautiful and charming wife. He loved to bask in the reflected glory of being the pastor's close friend. He felt the impression his muscular build made on the men who filed past, shaking his hand and nodding to them with a smile. He had been a bodybuilder for 20 years and it had built in him a confidence that he had grown to value. The pianist struck up a chorus inside the church. His spirit soared. The atmosphere of music, Christian fellowship, and his sense of importance in the midst of it all put him on a high that would last him a good week. Sorry, let me just do that again. The atmosphere of music, Christian fellowship, and his sense of importance in the midst of it all put him on a high that would last a good half of the week ahead. Then the prayer meeting midway through the week would pick him up. And keep him in the arms of Jesus and out of the slump until the following week. The words of the first song drifted out to him, and he quietly shut the outer door and sidled along the side wall, eyeing the seating arrangements. His 5 children sat in the front pew, his wife with the wife of the pastor just behind them, a colleague from the office midway, and other people he knew by name, people in whose homes he had prayed and eaten meals, filled the other pews. Towards the back, newcomers of whom there had been an increasing number each week. There was already talk of running services both morning and evening to accommodate the growing tide of people attracted to the charismatic personalities of Jesus and Carl Cronier, the pastor. Another chorus, Bible-based, powerful, a swell of voices lifted in praise. The atmosphere sparkled. Eddie heard Yvonne's voice leading the sopranos. It flew heavenwards as she lifted her heart. He added his plea to her silent plea of hope that their marriage would be saved. He liked to think of how beautiful Yvonne was, that everyone she met liked her. Together they had money and standing, a big house in a good suburb, a family account at the best shoe shop in town. His Yvonne could go shopping at the leading department store in the center of town with the girls when she wanted to. They got to have a coffee and toasted cheese at the store's snack bar. She didn't need to stint much. Together they had built a good life, built on a lie that haunted them both. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. The chant rose and swelled and continued to carry a tide of emotion, each person's music melting into the one central uprising of sound. Hallelujah to the King. Continue in my teenage imaginings, I write. Yvonne's mind switched to neutral, under cover of praise to the King of Kings, so that her most fearful thoughts could be faced. She daren't bring her thoughts out in full daylight, where they might discover her. Now they could scamper off into the bush, never to be heard of again, she hoped. She watched them dart from her, looking back every now and then to get their bearings for a return trip. There was Harold, a slightly crippled older tramp with bad breath. He would haunt her for pennies, crying that she owed him still, and that she had left him behind to scourge a living in an uncaring neighborhood. While she had been there, he told her, he had always been assured of the change from her purse when she crossed Jan Smuts and Empire Roads in her starched nurse's uniform, returning from a long day's work. Close behind was Martin, another man from that time, the strange companion to Harold, clean-shaven, tall and erect. Wearing only the best cut suit, he made his way more carefully, turning back to look at her as he buttoned his jacket. Her lasting impression of him was the shine from his shoes as it caught the reflected moonlight. His last look said what he continuously begged from her. Come back to me, my love. We never should have parted. I can give you so much more. In my arms, you will find true love. I'm going to stop there. And then reading from page 20. My adolescence was difficult. To keep our secret, I learned to act. I could be black, a colored person, or white, a privileged member of society, whichever role I needed to play, depending on the situation. If denied entry to the cinema, when all my friends could buy tickets, everyone can go in except her. I could, at least in later years, produce an ID, which would change the awful ticket seller into an apologetic auntie, telling me I could go in. I have nothing against the blacks, you know, it's just the law. Such incidents played out over and over in different but equally inhumane ways. My sister and I are in early primary school. The Sunday school goes on a picnic to Magaliesburg. At the resort entrance, an official meets the group leader, then walks the length of the bus to check the occupants, spots us, and refuses the whole group entry. We're only half oblivious that we are the object of his interest. It was before we knew. The message gets passed along the rows of children. There's been a change of plan. We're going to another campsite nearby. Public toilets at garages, beaches, and shop entrances. Mostly, we were shielded by my mother. I would feel her grip on my hand squeezed to unbearable tightness. She would ignore the person shouting that we couldn't enter and march me in. Nighttime routines of skin lightening cream, whirling the frizzy curls to straighten them and make us look more acceptable for the white neighbors and teachers. Mother forbade us to be in the sun without a hat, in case our almost pale skin burned to a darker shade of brown. The visit to my dad's family in Cape Town when I was about 9 years old was a stark contrast to our later visit to Mom's family in Zimbabwe. When we got to Cape Town, there was a problem with the boarding house my parents had pre-booked from Johannesburg. The proprietor decided we belonged on the other side of the tracks and sent us packing. After a short meeting behind the closed door with Mom and Dad while we waited in the car, we had to reverse the offloading of luggage. We were then cast on the mercy of my dad's somewhat reluctant relatives to provide us with our holiday accommodation. The sleeping arrangements were cramped as they had not expected us and did not actually have space for us. But I don't remember feeling uncomfortable. I do remember the fleas, though, and being bitten like never before. We children could not comprehend the complexity of the feelings of betrayal and abandonment that were the undercurrents to the family relationships. given the reclassified status of my father and mother, my grandmother's son and daughter-in-law. In their eyes, my father had turned his back on them. He had cut ties when he made this choice. With the nighttime arrangements settled, we could experience the holiday. The day's routines were unfamiliar on every level. We could wear our stockings on our heads to straighten our hair all day long if we chose, even when stepping out of the house. The front stoop faced onto the road. If you sat on the wall of the stoop, you were on the edge of the narrow pavement of a busy road. And my, there were others walking around, not just with stockings, but with actual curlers, rollers in their hair, there in broad daylight. I noticed the community's acceptance of different peoples in a way I was not used to. In a township, one is forced into close proximity with diverse levels of class, whereas in the white suburbs, the whole neighborhood has similar standards and norms, and one does not have to come to terms with differences or the other. The whole concept of family here was totally foreign to me. The adults got together and decided what was good for the kids behind closed doors. That was something we were not familiar with. In our house, everything happened in front of us. Clearly, my dad had needed to come back to Cape Town. His family rituals were part of the fabric of his youth. His thread was unraveling without them. Decades later, I realized, when piecing the timeline together, that we did not have a Christmas celebration that year. But there was a big event, the Coon Carnival, the minstrel festival now known as the Kaapse. The excitement built up, and then after New Year's Day, Tweede Nuwerjaar, these family groups and other large groups of brightly dressed colored people, complete with marching bands, strode, strutted and danced past the house on their way to the town square, each in their own competitive theatrical dress style, designed to be distinct and outdo the other groups. For us all, the whole holiday was an experience of wonder, fun, and frivolity. I did not want to leave. Here was a granny, cousins, a social structure that, albeit deeply flawed, felt far more meaningful than what we were returning to. We were headed back to an island of privilege, a lonely isolation from people who were full of the lifeblood that could have nurtured and grown us, happy and strong. I was sick all the journey back. There was no hug or acknowledgement that the sickness may have been a broken heart, an unfulfilled longing. I was given Panadol and left to sleep it off. And then the last one's a bit shorter. It's on page 38. It was a warm, typical day in Cape Town. I am walking the few blocks between my uncle's home and my cousin's home. My heart is pounding. I am about to meet a cousin I never knew. We arrive and I take in every detail. The house is so ordinary outside. Wire fence, swing gate, short pathway, lawn, bedding with shrubs, wooden front door and bell. The door opens. There is a loud, warm greeting between my uncle and his niece. While they talk, my eyes wander around the room. Modest furniture, convention, and order. The framed family photos depict life milestones. No photo of me among the smiling faces, just as there are no photos of them among the smiling faces in my collections. There is something so unassuming about it all. It feels comforting. The Kaapse Afrikaans chatter continues. My Queen's English is out of place, but my newfound cousin and I smile at each other across the distance. I wonder what it would have been like had we been playmates, she and her siblings and me and my siblings, together all our lives. How different today would be. I would be sharing the sofa with her, and we would be catching up and filling in the small gaps. But I am full of happiness. Here is what I've always longed for, the reunion. As it happened, the reunion did not take place on the sofa in Cape Town, much as I wanted it to. The real reunion, the reunion that set me on a path to heal my soul, happened when I was no longer a young woman. Sitting in the historic site of an old jail, I'm writing. After all my failed attempts to write my story, the words come quick and fast, like the phrases etched on the walls of the prison cells over the years. The small, sharp pieces of my life come together, starting in those moments and continuing over months. I claimed back my sense of self. My yellow bones had been whitewashed, sure, but as I clung to the realization that truth mattered, the sun rose on the midnight in my heart. That's it. Harry Owen says, Panadol for a broken heart. What an image this is. Thanks, Harry. I'd like to say some thank yous before we open up for questions and answers. Thank you so much to Rob Berold and Ariel, but especially to Rob. I think he had a very difficult time with me. I felt like I was always late and always sent the wrong things or did the wrong things, and he was just always so patient. I think with any other publishing house, I'd probably never have made it. So I'm really, really thankful. Such a lovely, personal, sort of small family kind of feeling. And even just being able to help market the book now, and it just feels very, very warm and lovely. I can't imagine having done this. It was quite a painful experience. But thank you. Crystal Warren, what a moving and powerful reading. So if you want to pop something onto the chat on the side, or Rob, I don't know if you want to come back on, and or if we should unmute and just have some time, or if you want to ask me some questions, anyone? Or if you'd like me to comment a bit.
I think Marika's going to say just a few things. Thanks from Ariel.
I have said my thanks at the beginning, but it's
Oh,
fine.
you did? Sorry.
I did say my thanks then, but I think actually that, you know, we're not like, it's not like we are 100 people. So I think we can unmute, and people can, if people want
Just
to
ask the questions.
comment, ask the questions in the just ask them and ask a question or comment. I think you can do so in the like now.
Yeah, and please, can everyone who can afford to, not on sort of tight data budgets, just bring your image, I mean, unvideo yourself, yes. Unmute your video so we can see your as well.
So that we can all see you, so we can wave at you. Thank you for coming.
Yeah.
Yes.
Barbara. Manca saluti.
Or Rob,
Sorry.
just say where the books can be found as well, how people can access.
Yes.
Okay,
So,
yes.
Marika.
Yeah, I can do that. I will put you can contact Ariel. So I will put the email address in, so you can contact, just send me an email, because it would, the print book costs 100 Rand, and if you are in Makanda, you can fetch it from, basically from Amazwi, but if you need it to be posted, the postage options, I will discuss that with you in the email. If you so I'll put the email in here, but Denise has also put it on Amazon, so you can also look for the book on Amazon and buy it as a Kindle book. So that's good. Thanks.
Sorry.
Maybe I can just ask Denise if you can speak to us a little bit. That is now more than a publisher interest, like about the process of putting the book on, getting the book in an electronic format.
Sorry, what do you mean? What
did you have to?
Okay.
Because we had the book published, and afterwards there was some process involved with. If
Sure.
you could,
Well, Rob was very helpful here because he found somebody who could reformat it all. So we sent the manuscript along there, and the very beautiful cover. Thank you so much, Michael, Jasper. Yeah, so we sent everything to a person who formatted it for Kindle, or they put it into a certain format, and then I received those back and I could check them. And then after that, it was quite easy because, well, certainly with Amazon, although I didn't necessarily want to, they weren't my first choice, but they just make it so easy. You pretty much go on, open an account, and then you can upload it if it's already in the right format. So that was quite easy. A lot of the other people, you've got to be American citizens or have tax, like Americans, like I wanted to do the Apple one, iBooks, and it didn't work. So at this stage, it's just Amazon.
Well, can I say something?
Yes.
Denise, I really enjoyed reading this book. I like the tone of the voice and the naturalness of the way it's written. And I also just think it's incredibly brave to put in the public domain things like that. Just astonishingly brave. So, and I think it's an ongoing process of being brave. Even once you've written the book and put it out there, you're still behind that book as the person you are, the vulnerable person that you are. And I really admire that. I think, yeah, I really do. And I think it's beautifully written.
Thanks so much, Mindy. It's sort of such a tiny little book after so many years. I carried that story with me for about 40 years because I started writing when I was 13. When I first heard this news, I wrote a lot of poetry actually initially, and then it took years for me to force myself to try and write not just poetry and learn how to write to try and write the story. And I mean, every few years I would just tear up everything and burn it and throw it away. And it was a very, and it's such a pity. I wish I had some of that, more of the earlier stuff, you know. I just think now that the book is written, it's been so cathartic, I suppose, in a way. I just feel, so much healing happened through the process of kind of laying down what I'd been almost like physically carrying. And it really colored my whole life, you know, excuse the pun, but yeah, and sometimes I wonder why I did that, you know. Why didn't I just reinvent myself and get over it? I mean, all my sisters managed to, and 100,000 people crossed the colour line, and you hardly hear the story. But for me, I just, you know, I would say, I'm not going to write this. I'm just going to let this go. And for a few years I could manage, and then it would come back. It was just like, it wouldn't let me go. It was like it had me by the tail, and until I actually wrote. And when I eventually, a lot of the writing, which poor Rob had to deal with, but it was very dark, and there was a lot of bitterness and anger, and I'm quite thankful in a way that Rob, you know, persuaded me to, he just suggested excluding that, you know, and it kind of makes quite a small book. I don't know if any of you heard the 702 radio review. And the first thing they say is, and I just thought, wow, they're going to mince me now. It's like, the book is 41 pages, like, wow. But it would have been so lovely, and hopefully that is still something that can happen now that it is in the public domain. You know, perhaps other people will come up, and maybe to some extent we can, you know, have a compilation at some stage, because I know one of the stories that really also prompted me to keep going, or now recently, a couple of years ago, I heard that my cousin, who had become a Mormon to leave South Africa and had gone to the States and ended up having 8 children, and the first and the last of her children came out really dark, and she had no answers. She'd never been told. Our family was the only one, you know, because my parents' marital breakdown. And when my cousin was telling my older sister, I just heard through hearsay that, you know, the one child was very withdrawn and the other very depressed. And the husband actually sort of took her aside and said, is there anything you want to, you know, share with me? Like, thinking that there had maybe been, you know, she'd been unfaithful to him. And she had literally no answers. She said, well, maybe it's when we went to Mexico and they burnt, or, you know, she literally had no answers. And when I heard that, I just thought, you know, the story is like so much bigger. And one of the most difficult things is, in a way, that my sisters are still so threatened by it that, you know, I have to write under a pseudonym, which makes it so awkward, especially like in moments like this, you know, where I'm me, but I'm not. And, you know, if I hand the book to somebody, it's sort of mine, but it's not, you know. But hopefully in time that will work itself out. And because I think I suffered a lot because of it and lost a lot because of it. And this tiny little 40 pages after like literally 40 years is all that remained. But my children also, I think, suffered a lot. And I think there must be a lot of people out there who, I think this healing needs to come and we need to open up about it. But it's a tiny, tiny start. Where it goes, who knows?
Mm.
Yeah, I think.
Can I just read from the chat, Harry Owen again? The painfulness of the experience is what makes your story so very moving. Thank you. And, you know, actually, up until quite recently, and while I was reading tonight, I just thought, don't start crying, because I could never tell the story without crying. Right into my 50s, and you know, I'm almost 60 now, but really until recently, I couldn't talk about it without breaking down. And yeah, it's wonderful to be free of that on some level, you know.
Sure.
And I suppose that's what shared experience possibly does. And then Carol, thanks. Beautifully read, Denise, thank you. And Sally, thank you, very moving story. Thanks, Barbara. Anyone else?
I would just like to say, Mom, that I'm so grateful and so proud of you. And reading this book has really given me a lot of clarity about like my own identity and about our family, and, you know, hearing the story. And yeah, I'm very thankful that you went through this therapeutic process of writing it out and putting it into a book. And yeah, it's something that I will definitely cherish forever and keep forever. So thank you.
Oh, thanks, Amy. It's yeah, your kindness makes it all worthwhile. Thank you. That really means a lot. Now I will cry.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, Denise, I think you said, why couldn't you just let it go and leave it all behind and everything? But I think you witnessed the suffering and you just felt that you had to be, you know, you had to bear witness to the suffering this whole thing caused in your parents and yourself. And it was so confusing that your parents didn't sit down and explain all this to you, all of you. So it made it worse, you know. you had to figure it out for yourself, and it was just, and you did it. I mean, you applied your mind to like what was going on, and you sort of, you know, it was confusing. Your parents kind of betrayed you, but maybe they thought they were doing it in the, you know, for your own good. And it's just, you just had to figure it out. You had to kind of, that was, and you did it. You know, I think you've done it. I mean, you'll still go on. There probably more things will come up, and more depth of the same things will come up, and you can keep writing the book or even rewriting the book. But I think you've done a good thing to, and you, as you say, now that you've shared it, you can feel the release of the secrets. The secrecy is just such a huge burden off your shoulders, and your sisters or your siblings who may be angry with you or, you know, upset with you for, I mean, they're having to carry on holding all this stuff inside of them. You can feel compassion towards them. So I think you've done a great thing for yourself and for other people. And, you know, then you can at some later stage, you know, maybe write a longer version of the book, but all I want you to do is keep writing stories and not giving us raves and narrative. Just keep the narrative going. There's nothing to stop you from writing a longer version, but just keep writing a story.
Yeah,
Anyway,
really
thanks.
nice. Thank you.
I definitely want to agree with Robert on that. Thank you, Denise. A longer version indeed, and we've got the 40 pages, which is already fantastic, and I think very important, even in its brevity. What you've done is, you talk about healing and healing the self, but you're also helping to heal a country, and it's, I mean, 40 pages healing a country is magic, and important and valuable. So well done, and going. There's you're doing it. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks all
So
for
we can
coming
lift
so
our
much.
glasses of whiskey, those of us
Yes.
who have that,
Yes,
and
to you,
or hot
Denise.
chocolate,
Yeah.
or hot chocolate, or
Yeah.
congratulations, Denise. All the best.
Congratulations, Denise.
Congratulations.
Well done.
Yeah.
Well done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for everyone who's attended tonight. And just to let you know, we'll be having book launches at 6 o'clock every evening for the duration of the festival. So we hope to see you again for, and my brain has gone blank about tomorrow's launch. Machoba, can you just remind me? But
Kotas? Something from Kotas?
yes, it's Kotas. It's the latest Kotas. Thank you. And there's a novel.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Robert. So if you check the Amazwi Facebook page, the details of all the launches coming up are listed there. But they'll all be, so if you can tune into them, that would be wonderful. And thank you for coming tonight. And stay warm, stay safe, keep reading.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Bye, Denise.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Wow, bye-bye. Manga.
Hey,
Hey, man. Yeah, and some sort of late, man. Hey, the pussy was on.
Paula, thanks, Andrew. Thanks, Lucille.
no, tomorrow will be
Thanks,
early.
Jenny.
Bye. Thank you.
No, never rating home, someone that would do the late, son.
Hey, Jenny, thanks.
Okay.
Hello.
Okay, Ramsey. No, tomorrow, Masamuba.
Yeah, the bailing home, so. The bailing home, so.